Running a successful fleet isn't just about staying compliant. It's about staying ahead with fewer risks and smarter tools. You already know BestPass, DriveWise, and Fleetworthy solutions. Now, they're united as Fleetworthy, a complete suite that's designed to simplify operations and keep you on the road. From proactive safety and compliance to the best coverage for toll management and way station bypass in the industry, Fleetworthy helps your fleet stay prepared and road ready. Built from the technology you trust, unified to be worthy of the road ahead.
Welcome to Loaded and Rolling. I'm your host, Thomas Wasson, and today we're going to be talking with the folks at EROAD. We're looking into the current state of the industry's messy middle with sustainability and AI. So we're going to be diving into a few things, not only how fleets are using AI and technology to save costs, but we're going to look at digital twin simulation models, innovations through things like AI and dash cameras, as well as data sharing and what it looks like when you put it all together. So without further ado, I'm very excited to welcome our guests. We have Dean and Craig Marris. Dean Marris is EROAD's Chief Data Science Officer, and Craig is EROAD's Chief Sustainability Officer. Gentlemen, welcome to Loaded and Rolling.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be on.
So before we dive into the questions, I want to get everyone's background. I'm going to start with Dean. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do within the org, and then we'll kick it over to Craig. And that way we can let's do it.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Look, so I'm one of the co-founders actually of Cortex. So Craig and I started telematics way back in 2004, actually. I came out here in 2014, really specialized in refrigeration and compliance and all of those road user charges in New Zealand. And then we ended up forming a company called Cortex. And then built a beautiful business here in North America, and then got acquired by EROAD in 2021 and being the Chief Data Science Officer. I love AI, focusing more on sales enablement now. So really AI is making a tremendous play in this business, in the market and transportation. So delighted to be part of this whole growing process.
Yeah, and Tom's Craig Marris. I've been here in the States for 20 years, so a long time. Originally from New Zealand, hence our accents. And as Dean said, we built up the business here. And when we got acquired by EROAD, one of the things that I really wanted to learn a lot more about was sustainability and the challenges around that. So EROAD was fantastic in allowing me, that opportunity. And so for the last nearly 4 years, I've really got right under the hood of it. So this is perfect to talk about this subject. And so that's a little bit about me here in the States.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, I'm excited to be having a wonderful conversation. Big shout out to New Zealand as well. One of these days, I'm going to get out of Chattanooga and find places that have less oppressive humidity. And so that one's going to be on my list, TBD. But let's dive in. One of the fun things that folks are trying to figure out, especially, is simulating, talking about different scenarios before you buy things, which given the prolonged great freight recession, add little trademark at the end, it's been increasingly difficult to have money to pay for stuff. And so digital twin technology is super fascinating. I'm going to get Craig's thoughts first about it because I remember hearing about this 2 or 3 years ago when I first started, but it's really amazing to see now with the capabilities and the models and the processes that we can really have a complete digital twin. Tell us a little bit about what it is, and then let's dive into how it's helping folks out.
Yeah, no, look, it's a great topic, this one. Digital twins and simulation is really, it's the tools that are allowing fleets to figure out, I want to transition to a more sustainable operations, potentially with EV or renewables, but how do I do it? It's expensive. I really don't necessarily know and understand what that looks like if I just look at it in its cold context. So simulations now, there's companies like Dynamin that we've worked with that do an awesome job. What they do specifically is they take your routing data, and that can be either from the transportation management system all through a feed from the telematics, and they feed that into their model. They're taking that information and they are literally simulating, once you've got your fleet all configured, right, your tractors, your trailers, as well as your routes, they will run a simulation or multiple simulations to say, hey, which routes and what charging infrastructure would we or should we or could we implement in order to transition? And what you see through those iterations is gaps. You can also go through and change. Okay, if I change this infrastructure, or hey, I realize these routes through the simulation, I really can't go EV. It's too far. It could be a regional fleet. So maybe you're looking at some alternative, like it could be hydrogen. So you're looking or renewable diesel or biodiesel. And so that having that information is absolutely crucial, because now with these models, I can also see the cost. I now know what I have to, what we have to do in order to transition, and I can look at the total cost of ownership. And there's software out there today that help these fleets. So I really now understand what is it going to take, and that is exactly what this digital twin, what the simulations do, and it's super important that fleets start looking at this now so they can figure out how do you do it, what is it going to take, how much it's going to cost, and so on.
And I think there's such a great point, because one of the challenges, I've been at ACT Expo and talked with some fleets and some electrification folks. And one of the things they said was that, if you can get 10 to 15% of your fleet to really make sure the EV and the other fuel cells work, the key, that's really good. But at the same time, the question they have, just like y'all are trying to answer, which is what part? Because they really have to be run nonstop. You really want to make sure that you're using the battery all the way to be able to get that TCO. And so that's such a great example of, before you even try to go out and fund and pay for an EV, hydrogen, alternative drivetrain, place an order, you can actually run all of your previous data and simulate it. That also explains probably why we're still seeing EV adoption rates, because as these fleets are operating, they may go from 5, 10, 15%. It's such a cool technology. And is that one of the things you're seeing as well, as that, when we're looking at these applications, that's just as important as making sure that you're tactically putting them in and you have the data to justify it, so you don't just buy it and it's just sitting around on your lot and you got a big old goose egg on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I'll probably add, we're in that messy middle. The win with AI is the digital twin isn't a one-off model, and it sort of keeps learning from the real routes, the weather, traffic, even charger queues. So the simulations actually stay current. And this is where I want to, being a data science AI person, but this is where agentic AI plays a big part. And sort of to define what agentic AI is, what is it? It's actually a goal-driven AI. So you tell that specialized agent, hey, hit our delivery window at the lowest cost of emissions, and makes a plan, calls the tools it needs, routing, charger availability, dock scheduling, and it sort of keeps that memory of the day's context and learns from the outcomes from reinforcement learning, and then sort of acts within the guardrails with a human in the loop, and has the ability to call multiple specialist agents. So in practice, if an EV won't finish a route, it tests the options in that twin that Craig was talking about, and then executes the best one. Auto books a faster charger, swaps to a healthier reefer, or nudges the dock time, pings the driver with the wires to, the next time it's smarter. And so the net result is, you pilot in software through the digital twin before you commit in the real world. So it gets those fewer surprises, and then faster decarbonisation, better service. And so for the dispatchers as well, it sort of helps provide that cognitive offload so they can focus on the more complex issues. So, digital twins is going to be such an important piece, I believe, moving forward with agentic AI.
And that kind of ties us into our second question, which is using the AI for efficiency and operational excellence. One of the things, like you said, reducing empty miles, excess idling, spoilage. I did it. It's so wild, because I did US Express, the variant program. We tested algorithmic AI planning. So we thought to ourselves, that was one of the questions back in like 18 and 19. It's crazy to see now by 2025, the question's no longer, how do I collect a certain amount of orders and pair them with a truck? with agentic AI and all of this data now, I can book locations, figure out the optimal routes, swap them in real time, change the abilities for dock that, moving things within the dock. Like, it includes so much more in just in the past like 6 years. And so let's talk about some of the ways. I like the food spoilage aspect as well, Dean. Talk about the cold chain, because I've done a little bit in logistics. Ice cream was the bane of my existence. I swear to God, like 1 out of 3 loads of ice cream would just melt. But let's talk about how we're doing that, and then how these AI tools are reducing that waste.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, it's interesting because across the industry, AI is cutting the waste in those 3 areas: empty miles, cold chain, and spoilage and idling. And I'll just quickly touch on the empty miles first. The TMS and freight marketplaces use the AI to match that backhauls, as you were talking about, and pull loads and using live truck location, asset type, appointment windows, and dwell history. And then you layer in that hours of service providers like what we do at EROAD and provide that service and equipment constraints, and you get real options, not wishful routes. And at EROAD, for example, we don't dispatch, but we feed those systems that clean telemetry and compliance-related context. And there's a simple example, so they can act. And now to your question on cold chain, that's where it really pays. With an AI-derived product, EROAD's invented a product called Core Temp, and I know Craig's going to probably touch on that, which provides that actual product temperature, not air temperature difference. Actual product temperature, not air temperature. So plus those reefer diagnostics, and the models spot the patterns like frequent shutdowns or slow temperature drift. And here's the agenda piece I've been building off. So, sort of picture this in my mind. Instead of just providing reefer out of range or shutdown alerts, the system's using actually machine learning based on, say, the previous 2 weeks' history. And it sort of provides that blacklist of reefer trailers to focus on, and then it takes the bounded action. So from the dispatch side, the various specialist agents can open a work order, reassign a load, tweak the route, message the driver, and it learns from the outcome. And, even with idling, it's similar. Machine learning, finds the lane, facility hotspots in cab, nudges and smarter appointment planning, and it chip away at that dwell and fuel burn. So idling and dwell time, signals flow straight into those tools. And Craig, I'll let you talk a wee bit more about the core team. I know you were going to mention that. So hopefully that sort of answers your question there.
Yeah. So core temp, as Dean mentioned, simulated product temperature. We're seeing like shippers wanting far better visibility on the integrity of products, so the food safety quality assurance, and receivers want to make sure they are receiving good product. A carrier wants to do that as efficiently as possible. And so traditionally we've had the reefer telematics, as Dean mentioned, so you're getting good information on, the return air, so the box temperature, but you don't necessarily, and also the integrity of the microprocessor running the refrigerator unit, but you don't know really necessarily what's happening with the product, and especially in a multi-zone frozen and cool component. So this, having core temp, is that sort of additional layer of assurance, and it's done all algorithmically, right? So you're not having to put any probes in there. You're just literally algorithmically determining what the temperature of the product is, and you're augmenting that with all the other information from the distribution center to the receiver. And it's the product when customers deploy it, it's like, oh my God, that's amazing, right? So because the other thing too is you can augment that with other efficiency information about time on stop, the efficiency of the routes, and then in particularly now when we're transitioning to more EV refrigerator units, you've got a lower emission. I'm reducing the waste because I'm not throwing as much product out, because I can understand if there's a problem with the reefer, I can see the product, the perishable product, is still okay. So you combine all that, you've now got a very, very different operation. So it's super exciting. EROAD's got core temp, we're rolling out, and people are loving it. So it's a great tool, utilizing AI and operational practices.
And I wanted to follow up with Craig as well, because you've got to imagine with these reefer units, the emissions impact. And that was one thing that I knew. I did dry van when I did truckload operations. But when I saw a buddy who had a reefer unit, you have a giant, you're filling up your truck, you're filling up your reefer unit, you're like double emitting for your emissions. If you don't have the right temperature profile, or if you turn it up too much to cool it rapidly, or try to preset it before a load, you can waste tons of reefer fuel. So with the AI and the technology, and now with the electric units that are coming out and play, there's a huge need for this data to make sure that, you're kind of doing it the correct way. That's always a challenging thing, because people will show up and their stuff's not pre-made, and then it melts because the trailer wasn't properly cooled. So that's another avenue, is that not only operationally we're saving money, but from an emissions standpoint, we're also going hand in hand.
Absolutely, and that's where it's particularly around rethinking about your site operating procedures on pre-cool. Right, a lot of fuel gets on ICE vehicles gets wasted on pre-cool. Even if you go to a fully electric refrigerator unit, you want your product to be at the right temperature. So getting those pre-cool practices dialed in is really, really important. But the great thing now is, with the technology from the likes of Carrier and Thermo King, they've got hybrid units. So you've got these electrical unit, electric reefers, and if they're short on power, you can revert over to diesel. And so you kind of getting the best of both worlds in that case. But fundamentally, reducing the waste of fuel and reducing, almost eliminating diesel in the transportation or refrigeration is a big deal. Huge big deal.
Let's talk about safety as well. AI and technology, there's been rapid advances in the hardware space, Internet of Things, IoT devices. We now see cases of edge computing within these devices, where some of these are using AI on the edge, which previously had been relatively difficult. Talk to us about how these AI-powered multicam and computer vision systems are really helping out. I like the blind spot ones too, because you never know. You got driver-facing, blind spot, side mirrors. Let's dive into how that is changing the game as well.
Yeah, I can take this one. Look, you're right. Today's multicam, setups, they put AI right at the edge of that device in the cab. So your side, rear, and your forward cameras feed that onboard computer that does that real-time object detection, and then what they do is classification. So they'll classify, is it a car, is it a tractor, is it a cyclist or a pedestrian? And then it sort of maps it to them to the sort of blind spot zone. So the driver gets that timely context-aware alert. So you hit that turn signal, so you whack that turn signal on, and it shows on their dash screen that blind spot. That's huge. That's huge. That will, highlights if the cyclist's there on the right. And we know that a lot of the trucks or tractors, say in the ready-mix world, they get off the freeway on the right, and that's where they hit the side swipe. So it's a big deal in that area. So even though it's sort of even backing up, and it flags that the trailer swing or the moving obstacles. So many systems also watch for distraction and drowsiness, inside the cab, detecting the yawning and distracted driving, unsafe rolling stops, and speeding and harsh cornering. So it's not just the in-cab alerts. Those, so you get the side and the rear, you're getting the forward-facing, rear-facing. But then what's happening, obviously, those clips that if they have an event, they get uploaded to the cloud, and then they get identified, and then they land in the coaching queue, so they can, get the drivers nicely coached and so on, and even encouraged as well. I think 80% of the time they get exonerated. So I think the certainly forward and rear facing very well adopted, but I really believe the next wave is going to be the multicam. And it is cutting adopting these. It's cutting the side swipes and back-end incidents and speeding up the claims resolution. And I think also it's giving the drivers more confidence in the dense urban deliveries, because they see the blind spot. And the cool thing, we're excited because EROAD is launching our multicam actually next month. So which sits on top of the current AI driver and road facing. It's called a Clarity Edge. AI. So it's sort of tying the camera events to telemetry or telematics, and gives that compliance context, which, that's super exciting. So multicam, it's a big one. I think it's going to be exciting for the industry.
We're excited as well. The safety innovations are really astounding. And then we got a little bit of time left, so I'm going to kick it over to Craig real quick for collaboration, data sharing, especially for sustainability and safety, and then we'll round it out with looking ahead. So, Craig, talk to us a little bit about as well. We're getting all this data, we're getting multicam sensory data, all of this stuff. How are folks sharing it between carriers, shippers, OEMs? I'll preface it by saying back in my day, I didn't like to share data because it'd be really awkward when they knew that their load wasn't assigned and it was running late.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting. I think, Thomas, you mentioned you went to the ACT conference earlier this year. I attended that as well. There was a speech, there was a presentation, a keynote by Lars Stenvist, who's the CTO of the Volvo Group. And there was one quote he said that really resonated with me. It was like, partnerships are the new leadership. And, with a commitment to share information for a more sustainable world, right? And they're leaning right into, transitioning to a more sustainable operation. So that means that partnership, we've got to share information right from the OEMs to the shippers. The shippers are insisting on this information because they want to report on the emissions, their scope 3, indirect emissions, carries their scope 1 and as well as scope 2. And, there's rules out there in California, the 253 rule, where, if you're generating over a certain amount of, about $1 million of revenue, you have to start reporting scope 1 and 2, and eventually it'd be scope 3. Well, you have to share that information. So I think the willingness is there now. I think, as you said, probably 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't there. But now it is, and these partnerships have been formed, and this data is being shared. And it's going to be a lot of information that has to be insightful. And so I think this is probably the most exciting area because it will be the part that will be most transformational here in the States in particular. And people could look sort of from the outside and say, hey, the US seems to be turning away from perhaps a more sustainable path. I disagree with that because I fundamentally see that because the OEMs and the shippers and the carriers, they want to run a sustainable operation. They want to expand their moral circle of influence, right, to all these constituents. And so by working in collaboration together, they're reporting on progress. Like, hey, this can be done, and this is how you do it. That is super exciting, but it's about this collaboration of everyone sort of sharing information. Once you do that, the world changes.
Sharing is caring. And let's talk about looking at here. We've talked about a lot of great topics. We've done everything from diving into, especially the AI and safety, utilizing operational, AI for operations, making sure that you're running more efficiently, reducing deadhead, empty miles, the whole shebang. We're talking about now looking ahead, even into 2030. What does success look like? And what are the ones, for folks who are listening to this, we've gave them a lot of options. What would a successful application look like? I'm going to toss it to either of you gentlemen for folks who are interested.
Yeah, look, I'll take that. Look, I think 2030 success looks like actually agentic co-pilots quietly running day to day with like what they call receipts, meaning you've got an auditable trail of what the system did and why. And then they call this multimodal agents, which means they can handle audio, image, natural, unstructured text, actually, and they have memory and context. So, and what they call metadata cognition. So they actually have memory, and they know what each data point is, and they know when to pass off to a different agent, how fresh that data is, who owns it, and what policy or consent applies. And so they're really cross-referencing each other. So I'll give an example, like dispatch, safety maintenance, and energy agents check each other's work and ours, human in the loop, before acting. So if plans clash, they simulate the options. Remember, digital twins, they'll use that. They'll propose a path, and they'll only take bounded actions with a human in the loop. So the payoff actually isn't just tech, it's actually business outcomes. They'll get higher efficiency, stronger customer retention from more reliable, transparent services. And the real network effects, I think, is more the carriers and the shippers and the OEMs will contribute governance signals and everyone's plans from the same source of truth. And I think the companies like the EROADs of the world will provide that AI sort of scaffolding that sits on even top of the transport management systems, the TMSs, because they can handle the unstructured data. And, so that's the exciting thing to me. So that's the net to me is the business model and operating model are aligned. So AI will have a profound effect in the agentic world, and the users will be cognitively, helped. So you have an assistant with you. So I reckon super exciting for up to 2030.
Craig, you got on the sustainability, yeah.
I've got a thought too. That the winners, I think, in 2030 will be the fleets that can prove profitability, safety, and sustainability can reinforce one another. Okay, and so I think and that is bringing that mixture together. And so the output of that is those fleets become more attractive to do business with. They are more attractive to work for. And that's that sort of moral circle of influence that I talked about. But the important thing right now is fleets have to start leaning into this. They have to start experimenting. You look at the simulations, playing with different configurations. It's not just one answer here. And so by 2030, the fleets that go faster up the adoption curve and can figure out the profitability, as I said, and the safety and productivity and so on, reinforcing, as I said, they will be the winners, and they will create the future of this wonderful, wonderful industry. So that's kind of my thoughts.
I like it. It's people say the industry's commoditized, but if you do the processes right, you share your data, you show your sustainability, you put in the homework, you're no longer a commodity, you're more of a partner, and it's a mutual win-win, which I think that you all have highlighted on such a great point for listeners, is that don't treat it as a pain in the neck, treat it as part of your ecosystem. You're all moving in the same direction, save money, you just happen to also use a little less emissions in the process, and then everybody wins.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, I have ran out of time, but we could definitely go another hour long if we wanted to with this. So we'll have to have you on again to talk about what you're working on. And congratulations on the upcoming release as well. If folks want to learn more about EROAD, sign up, check out all the awesome stuff you all are working on. What is the best way to get more information?
Yeah, just jump on our website, EROAD.com. And all information there in terms of what we're working on and in the latest innovation. Yeah, website's got it all.
Beautiful. Well, hey, thanks again for so much for your time. We will catch up again soon.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode of Loaded and Rolling. If you're just joining us, we're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, wherever you find your podcast needs. While you're at it, sign up for the newsletter. It's FreightWaves.com/loaded and rolling. Top stories in trucking. I write some of them. Our amazing staff does as well. You can check everything out also on the FreightWaves.com website. That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you all so much. I'll see you again soon.